that was fighting for gay rights, and people were killed.
Nobody was killed at Stonewall.
Nobody was killed.
Since she first got cast on the show, Eureka is a queen that has appeared on multiple seasons in the span of just a couple years. She's also been a quite controversial character when it comes to the way the audience perceives her, which probably has a lot to do with her over-the-top personality that can come off as overbearing to some people. But with that, there's a lot of parts within Eureka's story that offer a nice contrast to what we saw play out throughout the years. So with that being said, in this video, we're going to be talking about the journey of Eureka. Let's begin. When Eureka first appeared on season 9, you could tell that she was going to be a powerhouse, especially when it came to simply being able to command attention in a room full of queens. Along with that, she instantly caught our attention when in the premiere episode we are told about the pageant rivalry between her and Trinity the Tuck. But Eureka's run on the season, for the few episodes she competed in, seemed to reach its end before we really got to see any shining moments for her on season 9. Although an aspect that we did get to see is that Eureka clearly didn't hold back when it came to sharing her opinions with the other queens. And to many audience members, it came across as annoying. Although regardless of what you think of Eureka, it's hard to deny she has a very interesting personality that is sort of captivating to watch at times.
Could you shut up a second?
I mean, we've now seen her on 3 different seasons of RuPaul's Drag Race, and she seems to always have so much to say while also saying nothing at all. I mean, look at this clip of her praising Gia Gunn.
I absolutely love you've really become the woman that you wanted to be, and you're finding your place in the industry, you know, and you're finding...
Oh my God, that's so sweet.
It's true though, you know, you've worked really hard, and it's nice to see someone blossom into the person that they're meant to be.
Thank you.
It's extremely inspirational.
You as well.
It's okay to be different and be different facets of the industry and different types of drag queen. It's about self-expression and gender fluidity and gender expression and over femininity and excitement and celebration. Sorry, that's a lot.
Bitch, who's on right now?
There was also the infamous moment in season 9 when the queens were doing their makeup getting ready for the runway, and Valentina shares that there's something she's been struggling with, to which Eureka says, eating, prompting Sasha Velour to give us the don't joke about that line.
Don't joke about that.
This moment was frustrating for Eureka because she also had issues with eating disorders. So to her, the joke to Valentina shouldn't have been amplified to something that it wasn't. There was also a part of Eureka that felt that there was a double standard because in her eyes, it was because the big girl was making a snarky joke at the skinny girl that people were up in arms about it, like fans calling her insensitive towards people with eating disorders. Moving on, when it comes to Eureka's eventual disqualification on season 9, after Eureka did the fateful split on the cheerleading challenge, her knee popped. And in the days that followed, her knee just kept swelling up more and more. They ended up taking Eureka to get an MRI scan at a nearby doctor, but it would take a whole week before results arrived, which is why they continued to film anyway. That's when production ended up finding out that Eureka had torn her ACL and was going to have to get surgery. They would break the news to Eureka when, after the lip sync between Cynthia Lee Fontaine and Pheromone, RuPaul got up and left the judges panel to talk to production in another room. At this point, many of the queens were thinking that perhaps Ru was about to either send both queens home or have them both stay. That's when RuPaul comes back and asks for Eureka to step forward. At first, Eureka thought that Ru was going to say that there was a mistake made and that Eureka was actually in the bottom 2 and was up for elimination. Or that Ru was going to tell Eureka that since she's such a close friend to Pheromone, Eureka will now have to be the one to lip sync for her life while wearing crutches. She was in a complete state of shock, so her imagination was going wild. But to be honest, production having Eureka lip sync in crutches would have been quite an interesting TV moment. Lastly, the most probable outcome, and the one that ended up happening in reality, was that RuPaul announced that Eureka could not remain in the competition due to the severity of her injury. Eureka was later on told by the director of the show that they knew that if it had been up to Eureka, she would have tried to remain in the competition despite the doctor's orders, so they had to take matters into their own hands. But at the same time, it was also a legal liability to have Eureka remain in the competition after that point, so it's not like they had any other choice. They did, however, cover the expenses of Eureka's medical surgery and gave her an invite for the following season. However, the recovery process was super grueling for Eureka, who would not be able to work for almost 5 months after the surgery. Although on the bright side, Eureka ended up getting one of the best things that could ever be presented to a Ru girl, which was to come back for a second consecutive season, which was the closest thing to coming back for an all-star season, except now you have an advantage over all the other contestants because you've done this before. And so eventually, after a year passed, Eureka would end up up competing on season 10. Eureka in a way was a full package when she came to season 10. And honestly, Eureka did sort of deliver. I mean, she gave us some really good runways and sort of excelled in many of the challenges. It was also the 10th season of Drag Race, and many people wanted to have the first big girl winner of the main series. But Aquaria also had the strong storyline of being the baby who grew up watching Drag Race and was now serving looks stunting pretty as the queen from New York City. As a side note, for the season 10 promo, Eureka had originally brought in this look, but the director of the promo shoot decided to change some aspects of it, which left us with her official promo look. I feel like when it really came down to it, Eureka really did give an elevation to what we had seen so far with bigger sized queens. Anything she walked down the runway with tended to have a lot of details to it. She was also just very good at many of the challenges, and she knew what RuPaul found funny and always played to her strengths. Even in instances where it seemed like the comedy was too much, it seemed to have a way of getting good moments through the judges and arguably the viewers at home. Season 10 also saw the return of Untucked that was now airing on TV again, which brings us to the point that season 10's Untucked is one of the few modern Drag Race seasons where almost every episode feels super entertaining. There's plenty of moments of queens crying, fighting, and gossiping about each other, which is largely thanks to the cast having a lot of already well-established queens within their local communities. Speaking of Untucked, the role that the Vixen played on season 10 was very impactful for the series, especially during the season 10 episode 3 Untucked, where Aquaria and the Vixen ended up sharing a significant moment, because after a small argument between the two about how Aquaria throws shade at the other queens but gets upset when queens throw shade back, Aquaria would end up bursting into tears after having nothing to say. That's when the Vixen takes the opportunity to call out Aquaria for the impact that her crying will have on the viewing audience at home, because to them, what they're seeing is how the Vixen, who is a person of color, is being confident and adamant to stand up for herself, while Aquaria, a white young queen, is now crying because of it, which, to quote the Vixen, ends up turning into a race issue. When I first watched this episode, I was actually surprised that production had included this scene in the edit, because the racism of the fanbase wasn't something that was new information. To anyone that had actually been paying attention, it was clear that the fanbase did not treat queens of different races the same way. This was manifested not just through how the fans would immediately harass queens of colors by flocking to their social media and sending hateful messages, but it was also manifested in the amount of social media followers that each queen had. It was clear that the queens that pandered toward the white demographic would end up having a larger fan base, because naturally, people feel more inclined to like things that they see represented in themselves. Regardless, the show had achieved the infamous status of not wanting to ever address the fan base's hate, so it was cool to see them take the opportunity to include the Vixen's point of view. Things only got worse when the Vixen had a huge argument with Eureka while in Untucked, which Eureka later on admitted had gone out of her way to provoke the Vixen to test out the animosity that she would show. This would be the first of many altercations between the two queens, who to this day have never seemed to resolve it. By the time season 10 was deep into the season, there was already some uproar in the fanbase, especially when it came to the storyline that was being told through the Vixen's trajectory on the show, which involved the Vixen not backing out of any fight that the queens tried to pick with her. Along with that, the conversation surrounding race proved to be a very sensitive topic with many people. But one of the queens that was very vocal about this was Aquaria. Aquaria addressed the situation by telling fans that what the Vixen said in Untucked was completely right, and she hopes that people watching can learn something from it and grow. Then she straight up says that she doesn't want you as a fan if you were still upset over what the Vixen says. And even then, there was people getting mad at Aquaria for pushing her fans away, something that she didn't care about because she didn't want those racist fans anyway. But as the season was airing, Eureka got into a lot of controversy with the fans, when a video surfaced of Eureka lip-syncing into a song where she sang along to the N-word several times. Eureka responded to the backlash by posting a tweet that said that the video of her doing that was made over 6 years ago, and that she had already previously apologized, which in her original apology, she discusses how she was just singing along to a song along with her friend who's a trans woman of color. But what she now realizes is that there's no excuse to say the N-word regardless of what the context is. However, fans continued to voice their frustrations at Eureka, to which Eureka responded to claims being made about her by saying that she wasn't racist, because she actually wished she was black, a statement that was of course controversial to many people. Basically, it felt that every time Eureka tried to address something, she was managing to make it worse, despite that seemingly not being her intention. But over the course of time that followed, everything began to die down, and Eureka seemed to be doing an effort to try to redeem herself from her past. Things only got worse when the makeover challenge aired. People weren't too happy with Eureka's decision to pair the queens in the makeover challenge with people that they would most likely have a difficult time accomplishing to replicate their aesthetic with, which is is why she paired Kingsley with Aquaria, since Aquaria didn't have much experience using makeup for darker skin tones. But this was shortly after Rue had urged Eureka to be more competitive and play to win instead of playing to make friends. Also, a not so fun fact about this episode was that the theme was internet celebrities. And apparently Shane Dawson was originally invited to be one of the makeover people, but declined to do so due to his body issues, which in a way was the best thing that could have happened. By the time we get to the season 10 Snatch game, Eureka and other queens alike have said that during the Snatch game, where Eureka played Honey Boo Boo, she was constantly doing things that attracted attention, making it hard for the other queens to shine themselves. It got so bad that Eureka kept bringing out random props like ketchup and chugging it down. At one point, RuPaul was so grossed out that he apparently almost got sick from watching it, because he doesn't like seeing people eat. This probably made it worse for the vixen, who was sitting right next to Eureka and wasn't doing such a good job herself. Which brings us to the main stage, where Ru asked the queens who they thought should go home. Eureka went first and chose Asia O'Hara to go home, while the vixen said Eureka should go home, adding that Eureka was super unprofessional, and that it was baffling that the judges enjoyed her so much. It seemed that from the vixen's point of view, Eureka was making life impossible for all the other queens who were on set. But the part that's perplexing is that despite all of this, when RuPaul asks the rest of the queens to choose who they think should go home, Monet Exchange, Mo Hard, Asia O'Hara, and Aquaria all said that the vixen should be the one to leave. So when it came to Eureka's status within the fanbase heading into the finale, it's hard to deny that the negative reception that the fanbase had against Eureka must have played a role in why she might have lost the crown. I mean, it's clear if the fanbase doesn't like you, you're most likely not going to win, like happened a year later with Silky Nutmeg Ganache, who went into the season 11 finale fully knowing that there was no chance she was going to win the crown because of how the fanbase had turned against her. Regardless, Eureka says that during the lip sync against Aquaria, you could visibly tell how nervous Aquaria was, but that it didn't show in TV as much as it did in person. The Vanjie fan and the rip away and the cones on her costume weren't the most simple reveals, which made Aquaria be in a constant nervous state the whole time. On the other hand, Eureka had easy tearaways that played to her strengths, so she was fully in control throughout the whole song. There was also the rumor that the crowd was chanting Eureka's name after the lip sync, but it was still decided that it should be a double save anyway. Probably since having Eureka be against Cameron in the final lip sync would have made it a little too obvious who was gonna win. When it came to the final lip sync of the season to the song Bang Bang, there's been fans that have said that Eureka didn't know the words to the song, which could have been part of the reason why she lost the crown. But in an interview with Entertainment Weekly with Joey Nolfi, Eureka says that she doesn't agree with that sentiment, adding that she did know the words to the song and perhaps it was just the editing that gave off the wrong impression. Subsequently, while not everyone was happy with Aquaria's win, it was still equally as warranted for her to take the crown. What Aquaria represented was also very valid, and the way she handled her platform as the season was airing was a clear indicator of what she could accomplish once she actually earned the title of America's Next Drag Superstar. Even to this day, Aquaria has for the most part shown a desire of using her platform for good. Eureka has consistently acknowledged that she didn't behave to the best of her abilities when she was on season 10, especially with the way she handled things with the vixen. But she's grateful that the viewers at home were able to have a conversation surrounding the effects of racial bias against queens of color and what can be done to change it. Although, as we know, the drama between the two never really met a formal end, with Eureka making tweets months after the season had ended saying that there was a queen on set that would make side comments about her, wished she died of a heart attack, and was called fat and disgusting only minutes after saying she supported Eureka. Eureka and the vixen ended up having to work together many times and always maintain a professional working relationship, with the vixen saying in an interview shortly after elimination that Eureka is better in small doses, which is a fair statement to make. Had RuPaul crowned Eureka, it would have been a very controversial moment, and Aquaria had the strongest following out of everyone in the final. So for the sake of continuing the momentum of the show, they needed to please the fan base that was allowing the show to be so popular in the first place. Because of how impactful it was for season 10 to have the vixen bring to the forefront the conversation about the racist fanbase of the show, there was a sort of expectation made on RuPaul for him to take the opportunity that had been created, with one of the clear themes of the season being the racism that was going on in the fanbase. But it seemed almost as though Ru had completely missed the opportunity. After all, in the reunion for season 10, Ru would end up bombarding the vixen with a lot of questions regarding her behavior in the season, saying that the vixen was instigating fights and wasn't as innocent as she was telling people she was. But but it ended up resulting in the vixen storming out of set, with of course Asia O'Hara having a breakdown and an argument with RuPaul about the lack of effort that was being made to understand the vixen and her struggles. By the time the season ended, Eureka felt that fans were going out of their way to be nitpicky about anything she did, with fans voicing why they thought that Eureka wasn't deserving to make it as far as she did, or that the gimmicks during the lip sync were not of any value. It was also especially crushing that she would end up losing the crown after the momentum that she had managed to build for herself. To her, the community that was supposed to be uplifting was now being a negative influence in her life. But even though season 10 was over, it didn't mean that Eureka was out of the woods just yet. In July 2018, one of my favorite bits of drama that happened in the Drag Race metaverse was when Bebe Rexha, an up-and-coming singer, got into an online feud with the whole season 10 top 4 queens. It all started at the VH1 2018 Trailblazer Honors Awards, where the queens were tasked with presenting Bebe with an award. But Miss Rexha would end up taking to Twitter to say that when she went to approach the queens backstage, she wasn't wearing any hair or makeup, which meant that they couldn't recognize who she was. But apparently they were super cold to her. She said that it doesn't take a lot to be nice and that Eureka was the only one that gave her a hug. She later responded to fans saying that the queens thought they were the best and too cool to talk to anyone, but that they did seem to be exhausted, but quote, try my schedule and let's talk, ladies. So here's where things begin to get spicy. Aquaria's first response to the series of tweets made by Bebe Rexha was to apologize for not recognizing her, adding that she was in fact very tired and didn't realize who she was until it was too late. Bebe replied by saying that it was okay, and that she was just sad because she really loved them all and wanted to be their best friend. But Aquaria ended up changing her mind just a couple hours later, and sent out some more tweets where she said that Bebe Rexha was perpetuating a stereotype that drag queens are stuck up and hard to work with, and that she shouldn't just randomly jump online to hate on Drag Race queens, when absolutely no one was trying to be stuck up and rude. Aquaria also points out that Asia O'Hara was literally wearing an outfit that was covering her entire face, where she literally couldn't see anything, and that Cameron Michaels is known for not saying hi to people. Aquaria also pointed out that the comment Bebe made about supposedly having a more hectic schedule didn't seem to make sense when comparing that Aquaria had 42 gigs planned in the span of 3 months while Bebe only had 2. Even Candy Muse, who still hadn't been on Drag Race at this point, expressed her support for Aquaria. But Eureka ended up responding to Bebe Rexha by tweeting an apology for the misunderstanding and that they all love her regardless, and she's also allegedly a good artist, which Aquaria replied to with 3 question marks, prompting Eureka to delete the tweet a few hours later. Fortunately, by October of that year, both Bebe Rexha and Aquaria were invited to the Moschino runway show, so it was clear that they had buried the hatchet. But luckily, Bebe was in full hair and makeup, which satisfied the conditions necessary for Aquaria to be able to recognize her. Throughout the following months, Eureka was getting dragged from the most random people, with Jackie Harry, who after tweeting "Real recognizes real," Eureka replied saying that she lived for the quote, only for Jackie Harry to quote tweet it saying, "Wasn't nobody talking to you." To this day, we don't really know why Jackie Harry didn't seem to like Eureka, but at least she spoke her truth. Moving on, obviously Eureka's most recent appearance was when she competed on All Stars 6. I sort of expected to see a lot more from her than what we got to see on this season. While she did make it all the way to the top 4, it still felt like we barely got to see any memorable moments with her. It was almost as though she blended into the background most of the time. On a more serious note, in 2019, Eureka's mother passed away, and after having a very close relationship with her throughout their life, Eureka didn't really know how she could find meaning in her life again. To make matters worse, about a year later, her grandmother passed away too. This caused her to spiral into drinking and drugs. Eventually, around February 2022, she called the creators of HBO's We're Here and told them that she needed help. By the next morning, they had sent someone to pick up Eureka to take her to rehab. It is there that she was able to learn more about herself and has now been completely sober for almost a year. Essentially, when I look back all the way to the season 9 announcement, when all the queens were doing touring and doing performances at the premiere events, I would have never guessed that Eureka of all people had to deal with such a serious issue like tearing her ACL just a couple months prior. It's sort of impressive how fast Eureka was able to recover from her injury and be high kicking and doing splits in no time. But it's a testament to her commitment of wanting to achieve her dreams, which has brought her really far. Today, Eureka has been able to film 3 seasons of We're Here and continues to give us classic drag looks. I wanted to take a moment to thank my patrons. In the Elite Pink Squad, we have Wendell Norris Realtor, Gay Uncle, and Matthew Burns. And in the Green Squad, we have Azure, Emma Malander, Cayman Rider Fury, Franny Fish Sticks, Edgar Allan Pup, O Nicole, The Only Sean, and Soy Pablete. You guys are honestly so iconic, and I appreciate and love you all so much. If you'd like to see your name on the screen, you can support me on Patreon. The link will be in the description. Remember to follow me on Twitter at GreenGayYT for updates on future videos. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and comment below what you thought about this topic. I'll see you guys next time.